It is 4 o'clock, so we're going to call this meeting to order. And our first item is a motion moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by by Philip Smith. That Francis Smith act as chair for the November 10th, 2022 meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Is that Philip?
That's Sherry.
That is Sherry. Sorry, it's Sherry.
It's like,
I should be used to your signatures by now, but I'm not. Is there any disclosure pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any of the items on tonight's agenda by any member of the committee? I'm looking at you because I don't have to look over there anymore. Okay, we'll note that in the minutes. And before we start, actually, we'll do the agenda first. Moved by Sherry Wan and seconded by Nikki Gowdy that the agenda be adopted as, are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay, so as presented. Any discussion or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Next is the minutes. Have a motion moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Sherry Wan that the minutes of the October 13th, 2022 be adopted as presented. Any amendments to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're going to do just a little bit of housekeeping here, if I can find what I need to say. Some opening remarks. I want to welcome everyone to this hybrid meeting of in-person and virtual of the committee adjustments of the Township of Central Frontenac. Just so everyone's aware, members of the public may join in person or virtually, and they'll be up on that screen. For those who may be new to the Committee of Adjustment, my name is Francis Smith, and I'm the chair tonight. Bill McDonald was coming down with a cold, so he stayed home today. And I have with us Sherry Wan. Sherry, can you say hello? And Philip Smith and Nikki Gowdy. And up here is Dimitri and Crystal and Cindy, our staff. Cindy, our deputy clerk, will be assisting us in the meeting host, and we're also joined by planning staff. The format of the meeting will follow the agenda posted online, which can be found on the township's website. Staff have also prepared a presentation for everyone to follow along during the meeting, and that'll be shown on the screen. For each application with a public hearing, we will follow this format. One, as the chair, I'll introduce the file so that everyone knows where we are on the agenda. The planner will provide an overview of the application. We'll then ask if there are any comments from the applicants or their agents. Committee members will then ask staff and the applicant or their agent any questions if there are any. The public will then have the opportunity to ask questions. I encourage you to ask any questions and that you feel comfortable with the new process. The committee will then deliberate and vote on the application. Voting will take place with the members of the committee raising their hands. I will then state whether the vote was carried or defeated. All members of the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the new applications. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at the meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Central Frontenac before a decision is made, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Township staff will be in touch following the meeting and will be forwarding a copy of the decision within 15 days to the applicant and anyone who has requested to be notified. Should you have any questions after the meeting, we encourage you to reach out to staff. The applicant, the minister, or any other person or public body who has an interest in the matter may, within 20 days of making the decision or date of notice of appeal, decision or date of notice appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal against the decision of the committee by filing with the Secretary Treasurer of the committee a notice of appeal. I will now ask Cindy Diekman to provide an overview of how members attending virtually can participate.
Just closer. Thanks, Madam Chair. When the meeting is open to the public, the chair will ask the members of the public if they have any question or comments. Members of the public attending virtually will be asked to use the raise hand feature on Zoom at the bottom of the screen. This alerts the chair that you would like to speak. Staff will notify the chair if there is someone who wishes to speak, and then you will be unmuted. As a member of the public, you will receive notification that your microphone has been unmuted, and please just wait a second after unmuting before speaking. If you are calling in by phone, please use the *9 feature to, that's the same as that alerts us to raising your hand. And then we can move you over. You will hear a prompt on the phone that you have raised your hand, and you'll be notified when your microphone has been unmuted. This afternoon, it looks like we have 3 folks registered virtually from the public. Thank you.
Okay. In the unlikely account that we lose connection or have issues with our connection, the meeting cannot be restored within 15 minutes. The meeting will be postponed and staff will be in touch with each of the applicants. A notice will also be posted on the township social media letting you know. So with that, I think our housekeeping part is done and we can proceed with our meeting. So our first application is the deferred items, and it's B0422 Hinterbrook Cowan, creation of a new lot. And there are 2 of those.
Yeah, Jenny's doing it on.
Jenny is online.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, hopefully
And-
everyone can see my screen.
Okay, yes, we can see the screen. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a pair of applications that were originally before the committee in May of this year. They were deferred at that time due to some concerns raised by the Quinte Conservation Authority. This is a unique property. It's actually between both Quinte Conservation Watershed and Rideau Valley Conservation Watershed. So both conservation authorities were circulated this application with review. The comments from Rideau Valley at that time came back with no objections, providing all required setbacks could be met, the 30 meters from any wetlands or water bodies. The comments from Quinte Conservation came back expressing some concerns with the ability of the proposed lot to have a buildable area that would meet the requirements for the 30-meter setback from the wetland at the south end of the subject property. I will show you more as we go through this presentation. So the proposed severed parcel will have approximately 41.5 meters or about 136 feet on Bush Road. And the minor variance submitted is to recognize that this proposed lot frontage is less than the minimum required 46 meters or 150 feet in the zoning bylaw. The parcel will be approximately 1.35 acres or just over half a hectare in area. And the retained parcel will be just over 3 hectares or 7.5 acres in area. And will have frontage on both Bush Road and Sudan Lane. This is there's property challenging with the frontage and the layout. I'll show you on the next one. So here on this slide, you can see that the subject property is fairly large and wraps around a developed parcel with frontage on Bush Road. As a result, the proposed lot is at one end of the subject property. However, based on the location of an unopened township road allowance here, which intersects with Bush Road, there's not quite enough road frontage along Bush Road, which is why that concurrent minor variance was submitted. The conservation authorities did not express any concerns with the minor variance or the reduction in road frontage, as it did not impact the ability of the property to have a developable area which met any of the required setbacks. Here on the next one is a survey sketch that was submitted by the applicants after the last meeting in consultation with Quinte Conservation Authority. The red outline shows the proposed property boundaries or the severed lot. The wetland area as marked by Quinte Conservation, so they went out on property and did flag the edge of the wetlands prior to the surveyor coming out. This wetland area was marked along with the 30-meter setback from the wetland. And as you can see on here, the northern portion of the property has been determined to be a buildable area, which meets the required setbacks. There were some concerns expressed by Quinte with regards to a water course which runs along the northern boundary of the subject property. However, that watercourse is within the jurisdiction of Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. Planning staff had extensive conversations with both Rideau Valley Conservation and Quinte Conservation Authority in order to come up with a solution that worked for both agencies as well as the applicant. It was determined that Quinte Conservation would regulate the area up to that 30-meter setback from the wetland in the southern portion. And note that the gravel driveway that enters from Bush Road is within the regulated area of that wetland. So Quinte Conservation would require a permit if there's any upgrades or alterations to that gravel driveway. However, there will be no permit required from Quinte for the development of the subject property, as north of that boundary, the property falls under the jurisdiction of Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. They have not expressed concerns with this property of meeting any of the required setbacks, and therefore planning staff are bringing this application back to the committee based on the comments received. So the Township of South Frontenac, which is the Septic Approval Authority, visited the subject property and evaluated the test holes. They did note that due to some constraints on the subject property, the test holes are where the septic system will have to be located. Planning and township staff did also conduct a site visit, and there's a large amount of rock outcroppings on the property, which is why there's a limited area for the septic system. However, there's lots of space for both the septic and the house to be constructed on this proposed lot. As I noted, Rideau Valley Conservation Authority did not have any objections initially to the application as initially submitted, and reinforced that their comments still stand post the discussions with Quinte Conservation Authority. They did note that, as required, all new development must be set back at least 30 meters from any wetland or watercourse identified on the subject property. As I said, Quinte Conservation initially had concerns with the buildable envelope and wetland setbacks. However, they reviewed the survey sketch submitted and had some conversations with the applicant and planning and township staff, and revised their comments to state that they had no objection to the proposed lot if the development is located per the buildable area shown on the survey sketch provided. Again, they did note in these comments that a permit from Quinte would not be required for site development, except for any alterations to that driveway access, which is located within 30 meters of the identified wetland area to the south of the property. There were no public comments received with regards to these applications. Planning staff are recommending that the committee hear any public comments that are received today and approve both the application B0422HI for consent for the creation of the new lot and A0922 for minor variance to recognize the deficiency in road frontage, as it does not affect the ability of the property to be developed.
Okay. Is the applicant with us or the agent, and do they want to speak?
I would check.
If there's anyone online that's representing the applicant or the agent, please use the raise hand feature. I see no one.
Okay. Council or council committee, does committee have any questions or comments? Okay, I have some motions. You can think about that while I read the motion. Moved by Sherry Wan and seconded by Philip Smith. The consent application B0422 Hinchinbrook Cowan for the property located at part lot 16 concession 7 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook for a 0.55 hectare, 1.35 acre parcel as a new lot be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report, that the secretary treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant or any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years from the date of the decision, the date the decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And we will deal with A0922, moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Philip Smith. In making the decision upon this application, the committee considered whether or not the variance requested was minor and desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure, and that the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and the official plan will be maintained, or in the case of a change in a use of property which is lawfully non-conforming under the bylaw, as to whether or not this application has met the requirements of subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, concur in the following decision and reasons for decision. That minor variance and permission application A0922 Cowan for the property located on part of lot 16, concession 7 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook for the reduction of road frontage from 46 meters to 41.5 meters, that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. So those are our deferred items.
Okay. You can come up, Oliver, you're next.
Okay. So who's handling the next? Dimitri? This is application B3022
B29.
and B29, yes, Clow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dimitri, and I'm a planner with the County of Frontenac. Now, before I start, I just wanted to ask the committee do we need to troubleshoot the sound before we continue? Just in case it was a little hard for me to hear, but if you're okay, then we can continue forward. Okay. No, I just mean for the people that are going to be speaking online. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, if it's hard for you to hear, just let us know.
It was better after you adjusted whatever you did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So a consent application B29 proposes to sever a lot addition parcel for the purpose of enlarging an existing residential lot at B3022 for the purposes of expanding an existing developed residential parcel that's adjacent to the lot addition parcel. The lot that's proposed to be severed for the creation of a new residential lot is going to be about 1 hectare in area and 2.65 acres. Well, it's 2.65 acres in area with 162 meters of frontage with about 530 feet along Oak Flats Road. Both are zoned rural, while the retained parcel is going to be about 45.7 hectares, about 113 acres with about 1 kilometer or about 3,444 feet of frontage along Oak Flat Road. Following the severances, the two parcels one of them will be developed as a residential lot. The other one will be added to the adjacent parcel. The application was circulated to the Septic Approval Authority as well as the Quinte Conservation Authority for comments. The Septic Review Authority did not object, but did note that the importation of granular soil may be required for the development of the new lot, but that will be dealt with at the building permit stage. Quinte Conservation Authority also did not object. They noted that the development on the proposed lot can be sufficiently separated from any regulated natural heritage features, and we received no comments from the public on either of the two files. The one condition that we need to discuss on this application, or the one that I should mention at least, is regarding the widening of Oak Flats Road. Currently, the PIN or the property identification number that identifies Oak Flat Road ranges from 8 to 12 meters. In surveyed width, whereas the official plan requires all township roads to be at least 20 meters of surveyed width. So in accordance with the policies of the official plan and the provisions of the Planning Act, planning staff are recommending a road widening to be taken along the entire portion of the road that abuts the lot that's proposed to be severed, as well as the lot addition parcel. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Oliver, would you like to comment on this? Turn your speaker on.
One of the things I guess that I wanted to comment on was when I found out about the taken from the center of the road, the 10 meters over. I'm not sure how much that affects on my property, whatever, but I guess for a 66-foot road allowance on a secondary road, or whether it's even a secondary road, I think is a little much. But I guess the other part that bothers me a little bit is if they want it severed or whatever, but I'm not getting anything for doing this. I guess like you have the right to just take the land. And I guess I have a little bit of a problem with that, because years ago, it was in the early 90s when they redid that road on the sharp corner on the, well, if you have the picture of it on this corner, when the road went around there, they cut back so many feet as it was, and there was no money exchanged hands, but they cut some corners off too. They had to blast some rock and a few things. And we made an agreement that for what you took in road, give me some wire, and I put the fence up. And I guess what I'm saying, or what's on my mind here, like you're getting less than $500 for that 144 acres for taxes, and I've severed it off, and it's almost like I'm being penalized for doing that, because now I'm having my land taken away. And I just don't think it's fair that the township is doing this. I guess, like, I don't know how to go about this, and maybe I should have come to council before, but I didn't know that this was happening until yesterday. I guess if I'm going to create a lot that is going to give you 5 times as much money as it's getting now, I guess what I'm saying or going to say is that with this lot, I should get a little bit in return, whether it's even just the road entrance, because I know you have to pay so much to have the road entrance done. I'm not sure whether, I guess I did look into that, and I don't know whether it's $1,000 or maybe Crystal, you could.
I think it's $400.
It's $600 to get an entrance permit, civic number, and once your entrance is done and approved, you get 400 back
Oh, okay.
within a
Okay.
year.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I guess we had talked about that before and I forgot about that. But I guess that's just my concern, that, and another concern was that it's on a corner lot and I own all the way down to Clough Road. Well, if there's no more lots severed off that, you've just taken a chunk of this out in the middle, or not a third of the way, or even a quarter of the way in Clough or in Oak Flats Road, and widened it, and nothing will be done on it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just a concern I have, and I can see Dimitri's side. It's in the planning stage, or if that's what it is. But I mean, to have a 66-foot right of way on a secondary road, or is it classed as a secondary road?
I believe it is. Yeah.
So it's
it would
likely
be.
44, because I think Clough Road is actually 33, because I know back then there was different, like a secondary, then a side road or whatever, was different widths. But I guess it's just a concern of mine that I guess when I'm making the township money and I'm getting penalized for doing it.
Yeah, I certainly understand what you're saying. However, this has become something that we've done in the past, 2-3 years. And it is part of trying to legalize our roads that have no deeds or surveys to them now, and to actually create a width that if we did ever need to widen, that we would have the land to do it. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, though, when you own the land going out further. So you've got this wide chunk and then it narrows back in.
You know, like on both sides, actually, because on the other side of Mark's property, I own that right on out to the other sharp corner. So as you say, like, I just don't understand why you have a narrow road, then you're widening, going around the corner, and then it goes back down narrow again. And if nobody else ever severs a lot on Oak Flats Road, that's going to be the only chunk that's done.
Right.
And it might not be another severance done on that road as long as we live.
Would any one of the staff want to speak to this?
So I think I could provide clarity on a couple of points here. So within the official plan, there is a standard for township roads. It is 20 meters or 66 feet for all township roads that are maintained either seasonally or year round. I do know that in the past, there may have been different classifications of road that assign different widths. That's no longer the case under the current policy framework. As far as township's authority to ask for these types of conveyances or road widenings. So the Planning Act authorizes the township to take road widenings as long as there is policy within the official plan to identify how that is to be taken. Under the Planning Act as well, the road widening is permitted to be taken at the consent stage for lots that are proposed to be created, but not the retained parcels. So when we're looking at the creation of new lots within the township, one of the things that we look at is what is the width of the existing right of way, the surveyed right of way width, not the treated portion of the road. And if that is deficient or less than what is identified within the current policy, that is the 20 meters or 66 feet, planning always recommends to widen the road allowance portion to meet that current township standard. And that is to ensure that if in the future there is maintenance that needs to be done, or if the road needs to be widened, then the road space and the space of land is available under township ownership, so that, you know, expropriation or other means of obtaining land is not going to be utilized in the future. So in this case, yes, it's going to look a little bit weird because you're going to have 66 feet around the corner of where that lot is proposed. I'm going to stop working with my hands here and use the screen. So you'll have 66 feet in theory coming around here. And then it starts to narrow in a bit on the east side as well as running north. But there's nothing the township can do in that with that respect, because that's the retained portion and no conditions can be applied there. The one other thing I'd like to point out is on the corner of where the lot is proposed to be created, the township road right now encroaches onto the property owner's land. And with this road widening, that encroachment will be in theory fixed, so that then the township road becomes part of the property that the township owns. So I know that was a long-winded response, but I hope that provides some clarity. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Okay.
So in going back when I bought the property and the road was being done then, I had it surveyed and they had to do I'm not sure what the right word is. They had to go, like, they just couldn't take a shot down the one line and say, like, they only went so many feet on an angle, like, to go around the corner.
Right.
So I think actually that is already part of the townships now. And that was in kind of the verbal agreement that I had with the Hinchinbrook ward when it was back then, that, you know, they could cut a little bit off in the corner. And as they said before, you know, bust a few rocks or whatever to try to straighten the road up as much as they could. And that was just a verbal thing. And then council then, okay, if we're going to do this, well, then we'll give you so many rolls of wire to keep your cattle in along the edge of the road.
Right.
So I know what Dimitri says in that corner, it is a wider corner, and they did come over on the property more, and I can understand, like, I don't know, I would think right now, like, if you went to the old road bed, like, it's got to be close to 66 feet there now. Like where the old road is, or like the older portion of the road, because every time they top dress it, of course, they always move it about another little bit, encroaching on the corners. So like, I'm not 100% sure where the center line would actually be if you did that.
Just to comment on that, I do recall, I don't have the parcel fabric on the slide here that would show where that road allowance is, but in that corner, I mean, it may be more than 65 feet already, just because of the way that concessions were initially drawn out. They were drawn out straight lines on 90 degrees. So when you have a curve coming in on that, naturally that angle is going to be a little bit wider, right? So in this case, what I believe had happened is you have that 90-degree angle, the road came on that 90-degree angle, and then a corner of the property essentially got taken up by the road. But based on what I see here on the screen, or what I see on Frontenac maps at least, I don't think that portion of the road that encroaches onto the law proposed to be created was ever transferred or legally formalized through the township. And it's something that we do typically see in these types of situations, especially in areas where the terrain doesn't allow for a road to be installed neatly within those straight line concessions, right? So in that case, there might be a little bit extra road allowance, but just south, right around like the Oak Flats, like right there where it says Oak Flats Road, and just beyond that to the north here of that corner, all of that is deficient in width, and that's mainly what we're trying to achieve here with the road widening, is to widen those portions of the lots.
So in fact, that would actually improve the situation that we've got.
It would improve the situation on the just on the corner itself, because that's where the township road is encroaching onto private property.
Right. So basically, we're already encroaching on your property. So now we just want to make it legal and survey it. And
I can understand that, but as I say, I guess when if the land was yours, and, and the township come in and said, okay, we're going another, taking, another 4 feet or 5 feet of your lawn.
yeah. And in the past, we have always gone to the landowner and said, we need to widen the road. We'll take this section and we'll give you fencing, or we'll fence it for you, or some dollars on top of that, right?
Yeah, and that's when I was talking to Dimitri, he commented on, what do you think a price would be? And I said, well, I don't know. But I didn't know, as you say, like it doesn't have to be about money.
No.
If it's, if we could deal with the lot going in there, even just had to have the entrance. Yes, it's only, $300 or $400 or $600, and I get so much back or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. But as I say, I just think I should, if you're doing that, I just think that I should have something for
In return. Yep. Comments? Yep.
So consistent wise, just looking at the previous application, we didn't ask for any additional road frontage on that application.
We discussed that already today. Some of them are already at the width required without asking. You'll find the next one too is up Wagerville Road. It doesn't need it because it's already at the 66 foot.
It said it was still under the limit of the balance.
It was road frontage. They didn't have enough frontage. The width of the road, because of that sharp corner, they have enough width there without us having to do a road widening on that piece.
The one thing I don't believe this committee can do is make any deals about the driveway entrance cost in trade for this. But the committee, I think, because we're made up of counselors, can tell you that we could bring that back for you for sure.
Well, like anything we can do on this, I'd appreciate it. I know I can understand. I guess I just find it hard when a secondary road is, that road will never be 66 feet or any wider than it is now, because like it's a hard top, two cars can pass, 2 trucks can pass, and and it's a secondary road. And I guess, why do they need the extra, maybe for the corners? But I mean, that's going, that's kind of an exception too, because all those roads are corners
Yes.
when you get going back through there. So when you leave Piccadilly and head north, before you even get to mine, you've already made 290-degree corners.
But that's why we do this. Every time there's a severance on one of those bad situations, it's an opportunity for us to put something like this in there in order to get that and then be able to fix it down the road. Cindy?
Madam Chair, Jenny Capusta has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Jenny, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak to the comment regarding the previous application, the Cowan one, with regards to road widening. Bush Road in that area is not wide enough, and I did look at that. However, the dilemma with that one, and the only reason that I did not request a road widening there, is because there is a wetland located in the vicinity of where that road widening would take place, and Quinte Conservation would not permit any further encroachment into that wetland. That was a conversation I had with them. So in that case, it didn't make sense to take more land that was only a wetland and that could not be developed. If that wasn't the case, I absolutely would have requested a road widening for that application as well. I just wanted to clear up why we didn't do it for that one, and we are asking it on this one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we can do one of two things. We can defer the decision on this and have Oliver go to council and try to negotiate something there. Cindy, is that proper that would happen that way first? Because this committee does not have the power to negotiate non-payment of an entrance permit in exchange for this land.
So I think, you can't approve the application as is now if there is the possibility that you're going to get rid of this road widening condition, right? But if you want to keep the road widening condition, I think you can approve the application as is, and then have Mr. Cloud go to council and ask for some kind of compensation, whether it's in the form of fee reductions for the entrance permit or something like that, and then deal with it that way. So it really comes down to, does the committee want to keep the road widening condition in the in its decision today, or do they want to remove it? I mean, if you can defer, you can certainly defer it, take it to council, make a decision based on the compensation, and then bring it back to committee. You can keep the second option is you can keep the condition in place, take it to council, see what council says. But if council decides that they're not going to compensate, then Mr. Clow is still on the hook to provide the road widening without any type of compensation. So it's really, it's up to this committee to how they want to vote.
Sherry?
Just wanting to clarify, because of currently the way the official plan is, we couldn't really do that, but I would be wondering how Mr. Clow would feel about deferring the application, or what you.
I guess I would kind of go along with what Dimitri said. If we can okay this application, then, like, I'm not saying that you can't survey it, or when it's surveyed, if that's what you want, that's fine. But I just feel that any other applicants down the road, it doesn't give them any incentive to sell a lot off, other than that you might get a few bucks yourself, but to increase the tax base that you're giving to the township. And we're kind of getting our hands slapped here. So I guess what Dimitri said, if we can pass this, like, if that's the plan, the way the plan is set out, that it's going to be 66 feet, now you go and change the whole plan, and I know council's not going to do that, then I can live with that. But I just think I should maybe be compensated for a little bit, even if it is just the entrance or a portion of the entrance.
Are you prepared, if we go ahead and approve it tonight with that condition in, of taking your chances, negotiating that with council?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that I think gives us the answer that we can go ahead with this
Yep.
And then you'll come to council with your proposal of an exchange of something for something.
Yep.
Okay, all right. That's right. That way we're not holding it up. Worst comes to worst, we get the 66 feet and you can
I get
be
nothing.
mad at us. Okay, in that case, is there anybody from the public that wants to speak to this?
If there is anyone online wishing to make any comments, please use the raise hand feature.
Okay, all right. And committee, any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to read this motion. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Sherry Wan, that consent application B 2922 Hinchinbrook Clough for the property located on part of lot 4 and 5 concession 4 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook for a 0.09 hectare, 0.23 acre parcel as a lot addition be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. And that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed, and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. All right. And this is moved by Sherry Wan, seconded by Nikki Gowdy. The consent application B 3022 Hinchinbrook Clough for the property located at part of lot 4 and 5 concession 4 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook for a 1.07 hectare, 2.65 acres parcel as a new lot be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report and additional conditions. 8C, the transfer deed for the land to be dedicated shall be registered by the owner at the owner's expense. And D, the duplicate registered transfer deed for the land to be dedicated together with a letter of opinion of a solicitor qualified to practice law in the province of Ontario addressed to the Secretary Treasurer, confirming that the municipality acquired good and marketable title to the land free and clear of all liens and encumbrances shall be delivered to the Secretary Treasurer prior to signing of the certificate of official. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including provided the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified or any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any discussion on those? All those in favor? Motion's carried. So Crystal will get back to you and you should call the office and get put on the agenda.
I'll send you for that.
Yes,
I'll deal with the other.
okay.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for coming. All right, next. We are at House, creation of a new lot, B 3122 House application. Who's doing that one? Dimitri.
Okay, so consent application B 3122 proposes to sever a new rural residential property from an existing 28.07 hectare or 70 acre lot of record located at 1482 Vegerville Road, having a legal description of part lot 25, concession 5 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook. The proposed lot will be 4.78 hectares or just under 12 acres in area with about 244 meters or 800 feet of frontage along Wagerville Road and extend all the way up to the edge of a wetland that's located to the north. The subject property is designated as rural and it's also subject to the organic soils and mineral aggregate resource constraint overlay. The property is also zoned rural for around the Vegerville Road frontage and environmental protection constraint EP1 for the entire northern portion, which basically indicates that there is a presence of organic and unstable soils. The retained parcel is developed with a dwelling and accessory structures, and the proposed lot is anticipated to support residential development in the future. The subject property is mostly cleared along the road frontage, presumably for past agricultural production. And then the rest is made up of organic or of a mix of organic soils, wetlands, as well as naturally vegetated woodlands. The application was circulated to the Septic Review Authority as well as the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority for technical comments. RVCA concluded that the proposed lot, as it has been revised, contains enough area for development outside of any organic soil constraints. RVCA did not object to the revised application. The Septic Review Authority concluded that a septic system can be installed on the subject property. However, some importation of granular soil may be required at the building permit or the build-out stage of the application. There were no comments received from the public. So planning staff are recommending the committee to hear comments from the public and approve this application subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. And on this one, you'll notice that there is no road widening condition, and that's because the road meets the required 20 meters of surveyed width. Thank you.
Okay. Does the applicant or agent wish to speak to the application?
If the applicant wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature. No, I see no one.
Okay. Any member of the committee, any questions or comments? I can read the motion and we'll ask again. Moved by Nikki Gowdy. Oh, is there anybody in the public here to speak to this one? Okay.
we asked the applicant, but we didn't.
Is there anyone online wishing to comment on this application?
Does what?
Yes.
I don't have that in the thing.
Okay.
I took it from that impact data, so I don't have a mistake in that.
Oh,
No, I just have it as house for the.
okay. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith. That consent application B3122 Hinchinbrook House Hole for the property located at part of lot 25, concession 5 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook for a 4.78 hectare, 11.8 acre parcel as a new lot be approved, subject to the conditions noted in the report, that the secretary treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Hey Grant, you're up next.
Okay. Next, we have Taylor's, and it was deferred. Dimitri, is this you
Jenny.
or Jenny?
That's me, Madam Chair. So this is an application for the creation of one new waterfront lot. Severed parcel will be about 2.7 hectares, so 6.7 acres in area, with the retained parcel being about 40 hectares or around 100 acres in area. The proposed severed parcel will have about 97.5 meters of frontage, both on Kennebec Lake and the right of way that serves to access the abutting property. The retained parcel will have about 1,335 meters on the same right of way, which is a private lane from North Road. Here on the next slide, I've got a previous severance just for a point of reference, as it was not showing up on the MPAC yet, as there's a time to catch up. So previously there was a severance that was approved here at the end of the property, and Mr. Taylor worked with the township to complete some upgrades to the right of way from North Road to access that proposed lot. He is proposing to use that same right of way access to access the severed lot, which will be located immediately to the east of the previously approved parcel. As you can see here on my screen, the newly proposed one is the yellow, with the hashed one being the one that was approved by committee last year. This application was circulated for review by the Septic Approval Authority, who's had no objections as submitted, and noted the site was flexible for the installation of a septic system. Quinte Conservation Authority did raise some concerns with regards to the stability, I guess, of the road, of the bridge access from North Road to the right-of-way for accessing these lots. The engineer's report submitted did not address the hydrologic concerns. So essentially the Conservation Authority is looking for confirmation that this bridge access from North Road can withstand the 1 in 100 year flood event. As part of the policies with regards to natural heritage and natural hazards in the provincial policy statement, is that development isn't to occur in areas that are going to be cut off or limited or impacted during these types of natural events. As such, they have requested deferral of this application until the requirements of that bridge have been addressed to their satisfaction, and noted that they have had conversations with the applicant, and he was also working with a neighboring property owner who had some similar concerns raised by the Conservation Authority as a condition of approval of their lot, also along North Road, and they are working, my understanding is, together, as the same creek will be impacted or potentially could be the impact on this bridge as the previous one. Planning staff would like to note that the previous application that was approved did not have this condition, and when the planning staff reached out to Conservation Authority, they noted that was an oversight on their part. It should have been included previously. However, as we know, you can't go back and change what was done, so they are requesting that confirmation at this point. And as such, planning staff are recommending deferral until the concerns of the Conservation Authority can be addressed.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Mr. Taylor.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess you got the lowdown about what Quinte Conservation's after here. So yes, the neighbors to the north, they severed a lot as well. I think they were probably replacing the bridge because the bridge that they had was probably falling into the stream. What we're dealing with here is an existing bridge that's at less than 10 years old. So we have that structural report of it. So it's, it's a good sound bridge. The materials that were sent to me from Catherine about the hydraulic study, the main purpose, I think, as indicated here, is to ensure that there's no impact to the watershed, make sure there's no new flooded lands, right? This makes perfect sense. The document really is focused on new bridges and or new crossings and replacement bridges. Makes complete sense. Of course, you want to make sure that the bridge is not going to impact the watershed. In our case, the bridge is existing. So really, there's only two scenarios that can play out in my mind here. Is that we get the analysis done, which is like $10,000 or $15,000, so it's a non-trivial amount of money, and it passes, and well, maybe our severance goes through, and rainbows and flowers, everybody's happy, or they say no, it's no good. You got to replace the bridge or significant updates. We're suffering one lot. Like this doesn't. One, we don't even have the money to do that, and two, it wouldn't even make financial sense if we did. So either case, the bridge stays. There's only one outcome here. So the purpose of the hydraulic study, the main purpose of it, it has no bearing on any outcome. So that's my kind of argument to say, well, this doesn't really make a lot of sense to me in our situation. If I was a professional developer putting in a 30 unit subdivision, then okay, maybe, but in this case it really has no bearing on the watershed as it is today, so the bridge stays. Either way, there's one small part of it which is talking about the safety as well. We do have that engineer's report about the structural analysis proving that it's a very good structure. Yes, it does not account for the 100-year flood, but if we actually had, the bridge report, it's a 26-foot span bridge, 7 foot high. So if we did actually have waters that were high enough to impact that bridge, there'd be much bigger problems. North Road would be washed out at the end of Cox Lake for sure. I think it's 2 or 3 feet above the water level. So the safety concern, and then there's already 4 of us using it. And well, we were allowed to buy the property, but I don't know, if there's really a true safety issue, I think there would be more checks and balances in place. So I think that because of those reasons, I'm asking the committee to kind of waive that part of this process. Now, Catherine did indicate to me that she has to do this. This is their process. It's the only way she can move forward. But she said, a committee can listen to my pleads and and make a decision based on that. And also note that, of course, in the scenario where it fails and the severance doesn't go through, they lose. The township loses, right, all the revenue. So it's a nobody wins. So and in the other case, everybody wins. So I don't know. To me, it's kind of a no. It's just an easy decision to make, but that's me. So for those reasons, that's why I'm asking council to waive that part of this process.
Okay. Do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
If there's anybody online wanting to speak, use the raise hand feature.
Okay.
I see no one.
Questions from committee? So we have a bridge that's built 10 years ago, that there's a report that says the bridge is in good shape. And we have Quinty that's saying, we want you to do another report to tell us that if there's a 100-year flood, that this bridge will survive.
Right.
This bridge services 4 dwellings? No,
Right now, 4.
4 dwellings.
Yeah.
So if the bridge goes out, you have to swim across.
Correct. And like I said, the hydraulic study is more, I think, well, from reading it, it's more about making sure that the watershed isn't impacted, because you don't, of course, you don't want to flood other people's lands or destroy the ecosystem. But here again, it is there and it's not changing. So
Right. Okay, so I have 2 motions before me. One is a deferral and the other is an approval. I kind of need some direction as to which way you want to go. Nikki.
Thank you. So Quinty, the report you submitted to Quinty about how old the bridge was and that they were happy with that whole report. They just said that the additional condition is to do this hydrological study.
right, correct.
So they were happy.
Yes, yeah. The structural report was absolutely fine. And that's the same report that the fire department used to ensure that they could bring over a fully loaded tanker truck. And that was actually the bridge report. It was actually catered for the fire department. It can actually hold a lot more, because when we were doing the road, they brought over a lot more on. So yeah, very, very structurally sound, 6 I-beams, big span. I could see maybe if it was like some kind of small culvert, which was already flooding the lands, maybe they could have something to say, but it's a very, well, I think in the report, you can see pictures of it as well, right? And it's very, very well constructed.
So if we already approved the lot beside it a year ago, it kind of seems unnecessary to have this gentleman go through that report.
And it's being used by the.
Yeah, other people as well as himself.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
Philip,
Phil scratches it.
you scratch. Go ahead.
What liability does the municipality have? I guess is one of the questions I have after we went through a lengthy liability training last night. But I understand what Nikki just said as well. And I think part of the height that you mentioned, although there's lots of clearance, I can understand that the abutments might be the issue, right? If there's flooding issues. Those are the 2 questions that I have that comes to mind, but I have no problem if we're going to go with the other options.
Okay. Liability would be simply if something happens, we'll all get sued anyway, because townships typically get sued, as we learned last night. And often judges find us a percentage or 2% in paying the bill in the end. But I think the thing is, the safety sounds like this has been looked at and it is safe. So the issue is, will it sustain enough to let the water go through in the 100-year flood?
Mm-hmm.
And again, Mississippi has to raise that, But to put $15,000 into a study to have somebody say, yeah, the water can go through it if it's 100-year flood seems a little overkill. And it's too bad in these situations, there aren't simpler, cheaper ways of having these things done if this is required to create a lot. Yeah, it's being used.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it will be used probably for the next 30, 40 years until it wears out, right?
Yeah. Okay, I am taking the direction that we are going to go ahead and approve this with some conditions. So moved by Sherry Wan, seconded by Philip Smith, that consent application B 3222 Olden Taylor for the property located on part of lot 21, concession 1 in the geographic township of Olden for 2.7 hectares, 6.7 acres, parcel as a new lot, together with a right-of-way approved subject to the conditions. Recommendations, expiry period, severed parcel, the land to be severed by consent shall be for the creation of one new waterfront lot. Frontage approximately 97.5 meters, 320 feet of frontage along Kennebec Lake.
I mean,
That was an acceptable reference plan or legal description of the surveyed lands and duplicates need to be submitted to the registry office. And submitted to the Secretary Treasurer for review and consent endorsement within a period of 1 year. Planning Act, our section 5341 after the date of decision, that the schedule for consent include a description of the parcel being severed and the names of the transferor and transferee and reference to the new easement required over the retained lands on favor of the new lot, and municipal requirements is payment of the balance of any outstanding taxes. All taxes levied as of the date of signing of the deed of official. The applicant shall provide payment to the township for parkland fee. According to the Planning Act, in the amount of 5% of the appraised value of the land as of the day before the provisional consent was given. Or alternatively, if the applicant's transferring to family member, as defined by bylaw 2011-03, the applicant shall pay $100 towards the payment of the parkland fee, with the balance to be paid if sold within 5 years. In this instance, the following conditions shall be added to the consent schedule attached to the deed. If the lands are conveyed to any other third party within 5 years of stamping of the deed by the Committee of Adjustment, the Township of Centre Frontenac shall receive the balance of the payable under section 551.1 of the Planning Act. That if the land herein are sold to any other party within 5 years of stamping the deed by the Committee of Adjustment, and agreement of purchase and sale shall bear notice of this condition. In the event that they are abandoned wells located on the severed parcel, they are sealed in accordance with the requirements of the Ministry of Environment. Where a violation of the Township of Centre Frontenac zoning bylaw is evident, the appropriate minor variance or rezoning be obtained to the satisfaction of the municipality, and that confirmation is filed with the application file that conditions have been fulfilled to the municipality's satisfaction. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, or any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed and a certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. I'll just go back because I did skip over the expiry period. Conditions must be met within 2 years of the date of notice of, according to the Planning Act. If conditions are not fulfilled as prescribed within 1 year, the application shall be deemed to be refused. Provided that all conditions are satisfied, the certificate of officials to be presented to the Secretary Treasurer for certification within 2 years of mailing of this decision. And the certificate of official must be registered within 2 years from the issuance of the certificate as required under section 53 of the Planning Act. A copy of the registered transfer certificate shall be provided to the Secretary Treasurer Committee of Adjustment to complete the file. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, pardon? No, all those in favor, carried. All right. You will be building on a new lot.
thank you very much. You made my day.
You're welcome. All right, next.
Okay, so Rowan, you're next, if you want to come up.
We have green. Application 2022, reduction of water body setback. Jenny's doing this one.
Yes, that's right, Madam Chair.
Okay, take it
So-
away.
Perfect. This is an application for permission to expand an existing legal non-complying structure. On the screen here, you can see there's a lot of numbers, but I will walk us through it, and I put some colors on to try and help it. It was a little challenging, but we made it through here. So there's an existing cottage located at 1071 Cedar Lane. It had a number of additions over the years, as well as an existing open deck, which is this red outline here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. The existing interior living space is denoted with the orange areas here. So the main structure of the cottage will be retained. However, the applicant's looking at demolishing each one of the existing additions and rebuilding and enlarging them to make the structure more functional for the owners. The shape and size of the lot make it fairly challenging to expand the dwelling in any way without further encroaching towards either the wetland located at the end of the property or the water body located to the north of the dwelling. As such, they've done what they can to try and limit the expansion along the areas where the existing dwelling is, also to limit any requirement for additional clearing or other vegetation removal, and try to limit any disturbance along the shoreline. So the existing cottage, as I said, is here. The first addition is proposed to be demolished and then be extended to the rear of the property, or the dwelling. The other one at the east side, sorry, east and west is not my strong point. The east side will be slightly larger than the existing addition, and they will be joined by a screen porch. So currently that is an uncovered deck, and they would like to make that a screen room that joins both additions and the main building of the cottage, as that is more functional. There is an existing septic system on the property in approximately this location, and I say approximately because the applicants and the septic approval aren't 100% sure. They do have the permit information from KFL&A Public Health from when it was installed. However, they're not entirely sure. So depending on the performance review that is done at the time of construction, if amendments, adjustments, upgrades, replacement are needed, they would like to request permission to do that also. The current structure has a minimum water body setback to the high water mark of 10.7 meters. And they're looking to reduce the setback, not from the wetlands, sorry, to the water body, from that 10.7 to 8.7. So while it does further encroach slightly, it is not a large amount, and the constraints of the property make it challenging to go in any direction, especially to the east, because you have the septic system there. If you go further to the west, then you encroach onto the wetland. So there will be an encroachment in some way. The layout proposed is the one that was the most functional to tie into the existing structure of the cottage. This application was circulated for review. Septic Approval Authority, as I noted, did not have any objection to the application as submitted. However, did note that that performance review would be required prior to any building permit application being approved at the Township of Central Frontenac. And depending on the situation, there may need to be an advanced treatment system used on this property in order to fit the septic into the desired location at the rear of the lot. Planning staff are recommending one of the conditions of this permission is that the septic system also has permission for expansion, provided it meets the requirements of the Building Code Act for setbacks to property lines and water bodies, which is 15 meters to the water body and 3 meters to each of the property lines. Those are reduced compared to the 7 meters that would be required in the zoning bylaw. However, it's the opinion of planning staff that it makes sense to reduce the rear and side yard setbacks if needed to the building code requirements in order to maximize the setback from the water body, or including that recommended approval as part of this. So that way, if it's determined that the septic does need to have work done when the application is submitted through the building department, they don't need to come back for another permission application before the committee. This application was also reviewed by Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. They were not in support of the application as submitted. They did suggest reductions in size of each of the additions, such that there was no further encroachment towards the high water mark of Charlotte Lake, and that the new additions were in line with the existing main cottage building. However, they also noted in these comments that the size and the shape of the lot really does limit development opportunities without having these further encroachments. There were no public comments received at the time of the writing of this report. So based on all the information, planning staff are recommending that the committee hear any comments from the public tonight, if any, and they approve the application as submitted and per the drawings submitted by the agent, the Fabrique Arch Limited, that are included as part of the planning report, along with the recommended conditions in that staff report.
Okay. Do you have anything to add?
Thank you. I just wanted to assure the committee that we are aware absolutely of the need to upgrade our septic system. I have been a part-time resident of Charlotte Lake all of my life, which is more than 50 years. My dad bought this property in the late 50s, and the health of the lake and the wetlands is very important to us. We will ensure that both the septic system and the construction don't damage the ecosystem. Thank you.
Excellent. Any member of the public that wishes to speak to this one?
If there's anyone online wishing to speak, they use the raise hand feature.
They're all having their dinner.
No.
Any member of the committee with questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to read the motion moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Sherry Wan. In making the decision upon this application, the committee considered whether the permission to expand a legal non-complying structure is desirable for the appropriate development of the subject property, and if the application would result in any undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and neighborhood, and if the application conforms to the requirements of subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, concur in the following decision and reasons for decision. That minor variance and permission application A 2022 Green for the property located on Part 9, Concession 2 in the geographic township of Osto to reduce the front yard water body setback from 30 meters to 8.7 in order to enlarge an existing non-complying structure through the demolition and reconstruction and enlargement of multiple additions to the building. The existing dwelling has a footprint of 90.2 square meters, 970 square feet, including existing additions and uncovered deck. The applicant is proposing to retain the 60.7 square meter original dwelling, demolish the existing 29.5 square meter additions, and construct new additions with a total footprint of 55 square meters plus 11.5 square meter screened room that will be located where the existing uncovered deck is located on the water side of the dwelling. The total footprint of the reconstructed dwelling and additions will be 127.2 square meters, 1,369 square feet. The existing dwelling has a minimum water setback of 10.7 meters from the high water mark of Charlotte Lake. The proposed reconstruction additions and screen porch will have a minimum water setback of 8.7 meters. This proposal also indicates that the existing septic system may need to be replaced and or upgraded to accommodate the proposed expansion, be approved subject to the conditions and reasons noted in the planning report. And additional conditions, sediment control measures shall be implemented throughout the construction process, mainly the placement of a sediment barrier such as stacked straw bales between exposed soil and the lake. The sediment barrier should remain in place until all disturbed areas have been stabilized and revegetated. Excavated materials shall be disposed of well away from the lake. Natural drainage patterns on the site shall be substantially altered such that additional runoff is directed towards the lake or onto neighboring properties. In order to achieve this, eaves troughing shall be installed on the additions and outlet away from the lake to a leach pit or well-vegetated area to maximum infiltration. Regular pickup of construction debris is also encouraged to prevent construction debris from blowing into the lake. With the exception of a maximum clearing of 9 meters for water access, the shoreline shall be planted with native shrubs to a minimum depth of 3 meters measured from the shoreline towards the rear of the lot. This effort will help to mitigate the effects of erosion and surface runoff of the lake. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including notice of the decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
So there was extra conditions put in the resolution, and that's just the basic conditions for the waterfront. So, you know, I'll send it to you.
Okay, our last one is night. And this is Jenny
That
is
me,
doing this.
Madam Chair. I'm just working on the share screen here. All right, there we go. That should be up now. So this is another application for permission for the expansion of an existing legally non-complying structure. This one is located also on Sharbot Lake. However, this one is located on the west basin of Sharbot Lake, and the previous one was located on the east basin. The difference there is that the west basin of Sharbot Lake has been designated by the province of Ontario as an at-capacity lake trout lake, and therefore has additional development constraints, mainly related to septic systems, phosphorus input, things like that. And that's based on conversations with the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. As a result of this being on an at-capacity lake trout lake, the applicants did complete and submit a detailed EIS, or well, it says scope, but I found it fairly detailed. EIS in support of this application for expansion of their cottage. This application, along with the environmental assessment, was submitted for review by MECP prior to any circulation of this application. This proposal, as you can see here, the existing cottage is this yellow outline here that I am highlighting with my cursor now. They are proposing to demolish this cottage and enlarge it by expanding it to the rear. It's a single-story cottage now with some lower level services and access. They're looking at maintaining that single story, but also adding a walkout basement area. So there's some slight additional living space without much of an increase in the footprint. The footprint increase also extends to this side of the existing dwelling, where they'd like to have a screen porch towards the rear and an open and uncovered deck at the front along the shoreline, or towards the shoreline, I should say. This property is fairly steeply sloped, actually, from the rear down to the water, with a lot of rocky outcroppings. So the topography on the property really does limit the ability of this applicant to further increase the water body setback. And they have worked within the constraints of that property to try and do what they can to expand the cottage while maintaining the least amount of clearing that is needed, as well as looking at the stability and structure of the slope. Part of this application is that there's an existing septic gray water system that's located in approximately the vicinity of the proposed new uncovered deck and screen porch. And the applicants have indicated they are looking to relocate that to as far back on the property as possible. That will depend on what the system looks like. So this application, again, with the EIS and everything, was circulated for review by the Septic Approval Authority. They said they had no objections as submitted, but did note that you may need an advanced treatment system designed to fit specifically in the desired location due to the site topography and soil conditions. As I noted, there's some slopes and rock outcrops quite prominent on this property. So they are going to have to do some work likely with the Septic Approval Authority and perhaps a designer to ensure that they can fit a system that is suitably sized for the enlarged dwelling on the property in the location they've indicated. This application was reviewed by MECP, who also reviewed that EIS, as I noted before, and they stated no objections to the application as submitted, and were in favor of the expansion being located away from the shoreline and to the rear and the side of the existing dwelling. The MECP felt the proposal represents a net environmental gain, especially with the septic relocation, going from a gray water pit less than 30 meters from the water body to hopefully a class 4 system or an advanced treatment system outside that 30-meter setback. Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority also reviewed the submitted application and the environmental assessment. They were not in support of this application as submitted. They did suggest in this case a reduction in the size of the expansion for the dwelling, as well as a reduction in the existing shoreline development, including marine railway structures and decking that is in place along the shoreline. They did also note in their comments that there were high steep slopes on the property, but estimated that they would not constitute an erosion hazard for the development purposes proposed. Mississippi Conservation also did note that the site topography eliminates alternative development locations for this proposal. There were no public comments received at the time of writing of this report. Planning staff are recommending that the committee hear any comments from the public tonight, if there are, and that they approve the application as submitted, along with the conditions in the planning report.
Okay, is there any members of the public that wishes to speak to this?
We do have the applicant on the line. Do you wish to speak? You can use the raise hand feature. Okay, I have allowed you to talk. You should be able to speak now.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I don't really have much to say. I actually was there and took my equipment to dig the test holes, and yes, where we're going to put the septic system will probably require some sort of an advanced treatment system, which obviously is not an issue. We're looking to do the best we can for the ecology of the lake, considering the original system that was there when we purchased the cottage 20 some years ago. Just one comment in regards to Mississippi's comment about the decking along the shoreline. Approximately 6 years ago, I'd made an application to Mississippi to change the existing dock, and they had approved that 6 years ago. So there's an application to them that was approved 6 years ago. It's just interesting. I never saw that comment that they'd made.
You might need to ask them to go back through their records.
I prefer not to. Let's just leave them alone. But I dealt with Andy there. There was an existing dock that was made of like railway ties, and we took it out and improved the ecology, which they were quite happy about. So anyway, we'll just leave that alone. It's just it's kind of funny to hear them make that comment when they had approved it a few years ago. But other than that, I have nothing to add as to council.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any questions or comments from committee? All right, I have a motion moved by Sherry Wan, seconded by Philip Smith. In making the decision upon this application, the committee considered whether the permission to expand a legal non-complying structure is desirable for the appropriate development of the subject property, and if the application would result in any undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties or neighborhood. And if the application conforms to the requirements of subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, concur in the following decision and reasons for decision. The permission application A22 Knight for the property located in lot 13, concession 9, the geographic township of Olden, to replace the existing 170 square metered, 1,260 square foot single-story dwelling with attached covered deck, which will be replaced with a new single-story plus walkout basement dwelling with a footprint of 163.97 square meters, 1,765 square feet. The reconstructed dwelling includes a screen porch and uncovered deck, bringing the total footprint to 259.5 square meters or 2,793 square feet, and will not further reduce the existing non-complying water body setback. Permission for the expansion of a legal non-conforming use or structure is required because the current structure does not comply with the zoning bylaw because it does not meet the required 30-meter setback to the high water mark of Charlotte Lake. Be approved subject to the conditions and reasons noted in the planning report. And additional conditions, number 7, Sediment controls will be implemented throughout the construction. Sediment barriers such as stack straw bales between exposed soil and the lake. Sediment barriers should remain in place until all disturbed areas have been stabilized and revegetated. Excavated material will be disposed away from the lake. Natural drainage patterns on the site shall not be substantially altered that additional runoff is directed towards the lake or onto neighboring properties. In order to achieve this, eaves troughing shall be installed on the additions and outlet away from the lake to a leach pit or well-vegetated area to maximize infiltration. Regular pickup of construction debris is encouraged to prevent construction debris blowing into the lake. With the exception of a maximum clearing of 9 meters for water access, the shoreline shall be planted with native shrubs to a minimum depth of 3 meters measured from the shoreline towards the rear of the lot. This effort will help to mitigate the effects of erosion and surface runoff on the lake. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Any further discussion? I think these last two applications with new septic systems they're major improvements. All those in favor? Motion's carried. So good luck with your building.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else to come before committee? I have one message that I need to relay from your previous chair, Mr. Bill McDonald. And that is to Jenny and to Dimitri and Sonia. Thank you very much from him for all of the years that you put up with his chairing and his bad jokes. And he really appreciates the professionalism that you've shown for this committee of adjustment. And to Joe Gallivan, he wants to give his best for all the years working with Joe, and he really appreciates the way that Joe handles himself and answers questions and is very approachable, which is so important for a planner. So that was Bill's last remarks while he's deer hunting, and now he's got a sore throat. So it's probably from being out in the beautiful weather deer hunting. All right, we have a motion, and it is by Philip Smith and Sherry Wan, that this meeting be adjourned until 4 p.m. January the 12th, 2023, virtually and in person at Oso Hall, Garrett Street, Charlotte Lake. No December meeting. All those in favor? Carried.
Give us time to catch up.